Okay, let's dive into this explainer and uncover the psychology behind why we either absolutely love or completely hate the technology we use every single day. I mean, we interact with screens constantly, right? From the moment we wake up to the second we go to sleep. But we rarely stop to think about the invisible architecture that is guiding our every single tap and click.
We've all been there. You just want to throw your phone across the room because an app is acting up. But here's the thing. That feeling of sheer frustration usually isn't your fault at all. It's actually a fundamental breakdown in human-computer interaction. When design fails, it doesn't just waste your time, it creates this literal emotional wall. So today, we are going to look at the foundational theories of user-centered design to understand exactly why that happens.
To demystify this whole process, we're going to break this explainer down into 4 key areas: the physical baseline, the pure accessibility principles, the emotion of design, and finally, the 7 stages of action.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the physical baseline, where we look at designing for human limits.
So, before a user can truly fall in love with an interface, they literally have to be able to physically interact with it using their baseline sensory and motor skills. Design absolutely has to account for our biological limits. To minimize physical effort and cognitive load, designers rely on a fundamental principle called Fitz's law. Basically, the smaller a button is and the further away it is from your cursor or your finger, the longer it's going to take you to accurately hit it. It's a simple idea, but it's totally crucial.
And this is exactly why the Windows Start button or the Mac menu bar are jammed right into the very edges of your screen. They act like this invisible, infinite wall to effortlessly stop your cursor so you don't overshoot. It's brilliant. It also addresses the infamous fat finger problem on our phones. If interactive elements don't have generous, clickable padding around them, fine motor control just becomes a frustrating guessing game.
But moving beyond motor control to our visual limits, get this. Roughly 1 in 12 men have some form of color vision deficiency. That is a massive chunk of the population. Because of that, it is absolutely critical to never, ever rely on color alone to convey important information. If a system status just changes a dot from green to red without adding a text label or a little icon that says error, well, a significant portion of your users are just left completely in the dark.
Which leads us nicely into Section 2, the PARG accessibility principles, looking at WCAG and universal access.
So, those visual limits we just mentioned, they tie directly into the broader Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG for short. To be truly accessible, an interface has to follow the 4 pillars of the POUR acronym. It must be perceivable through things like text alternatives, operable via keyboard navigation, understandable through clear and predictable layouts, and robust enough to play nicely with different assistive technologies like screen readers.
Think about it like this. Providing adaptable content empowers everyone, whereas inaccessible content completely locks people out. Like we said, a color-only chart is just a dead end for someone with low vision. But providing captions for a video, that doesn't just help a deaf user access educational content, it's a total lifesaver for you when you're trying to watch a video in a noisy coffee shop and forgot your headphones. Good accessibility literally improves the experience for absolutely everyone.
All right, moving on to Section 3, the emotion of design, featuring Donald Norman's 3 levels. Once the physical and accessibility baselines are set in stone, we have to recognize that a user's actual mood, their emotional state, hugely impacts how they experience a product. Cognitive scientist Don Norman figured out that interaction isn't just about pure logic. He built this incredible framework. First, you have the visceral level, which is that immediate subconscious gut reaction to aesthetics. Then the behavioral level, which is all about the smooth, effective feel of actually using the product. And finally, the reflective level, which is the conscious meaning or self-image associated with it, like feeling super smart and successful when you finally master a really complex piece of software.
And here's where emotion really meets design. Human error. We all mess up, but designing for those inevitable moments with a friendly, plain language message creates a really positive emotional response. It bypasses that frustrating cognitive lockup caused by robotic codes. I mean, imagine encountering error 0x800700005 when you're already stressed out. It completely halts your momentum. But if it just says, oops, looks like you forgot a password, it keeps that behavioral flow feeling smooth and supportive.
And that brings us to our final part, Section 4, the 7 stages of action and crossing the 2 gulfs.
Now that we've covered perception and emotion, we arrive at the nitty-gritty cognitive loop of actually getting a task done. Norman modeled this interaction as a continuous loop containing 2 massive gaps, or gulfs, where users usually get completely stuck, first figuring out what to do next, and second, interpreting what the system just did. He calls these the 2 gulfs.
You have to cross the gulf of execution to say, hey, how do I operate this? And then cross the gulf of evaluation to ask, wait, what just happened after I took that action?
A beautifully designed system bridges that first gap, the gulf of execution, by minimizing goal conflict and making the primary action visually unmistakable. Google's homepage is basically the gold standard for this. One big search bar. There is zero confusion about what you're supposed to do. On the flip side, if you land on a cluttered app that tries to do 50 things at once, it creates massive goal conflict and you're just left completely paralyzed.
To successfully bridge that execution gap, we intuitively fly through 4 rapid-fire mental steps. First, we form a high-level goal, like, I need to buy a ticket. Second, we form the intention of which specific site to use. Third, we specify the exact action, like typing dates into a form. And finally, stage 4, the physical execution of actually clicking that search button. Boom! Action executed. But the loop isn't over. Instantly, the user enters the second half of this process to figure out if what they just did actually worked. And this is exactly where we have to cross back over that second gap, the gulf of evaluation.
To cross it, users constantly observe sensory feedback. We go through 3 more stages. First, we perceive the system state, like seeing a loading spinner pop up. Second, we interpret what that means using our familiar mental models. And third, we evaluate the outcome. Basically, your brain is just constantly asking, what does this mean and did I actually achieve what I wanted?
This is exactly why immediate, understandable feedback is an absolute must. It completely prevents the quiet panic of wondering if an important email just vanished into the void. Think about transferring money on a banking app. If you hit submit and the button doesn't react and the screen doesn't change, you are left stranded in the gulf of evaluation. But a clear, instant notification solves this completely. You cross the gulf safely.
So here's the thought to leave you with today. Think about a piece of technology you use every single day. At which of those 7 stages does its design truly shine? Or where does it spectacularly fail? Next time you find yourself wanting to throw your phone at the wall, take a breath and remember, it's not you, it's the design. Analyze your own digital habits, recognize these underlying human factors, and ask yourself how we might bridge these gulfs to design a much more intuitive future. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this completely changes how you look at the digital world around you.